From the first second of indication that there was trouble at the SunTrust Bank, these folks and their agencies immediately sprung into action and worked together and have continued to work together to do everything that was necessary to get to where we are today, and will continue to do so as this case moves through the system. Our community and our offices and our agencies have received so much support from our friends at the statewide level. Governor Ron DeSantis, Attorney General Ashley Moody have been fantastic in their support of our community and us during this time. Today, the Highlands County Grand Jury indicted Zephen Xaver for 5 counts of first-degree murder for the killings of the 5 victims at the SunTrust Bank in Sebring on January 23, 2019. The defendant will be arraigned on these charges on February 25th. This indictment is an important early step in what will likely become a very long process in the criminal justice system. My prosecutors and I, and all the law enforcement officials, are committed to devoting all necessary resources to bring justice for our victims and their families. As time passes from the date of the murders, life for our community goes on, but for the families and the friends of our victims, reality is just now starting to sink in. Yesterday, I spent the day meeting with the victims' families, and it's just been such a terrible tragedy for them. They are going through such a difficult time. I ask that you keep these devastated families in your prayers. Although they will never recover from this terrible, terrible tragedy, my hope is that with the support of the community, they can gather the strength to persevere for the next many difficult days, months, and years ahead. We all must do our part to help them. Since the senseless killings, our community has seen so many people come together to help these families, and it is important that it continues as this goes on. Today, I filed a notice that I will be seeking the death penalty against Zephen Xaver. As state attorney, it is my duty to apply the facts of each case to the law. In this case, after carefully analyzing the facts as I know them today and applying the law, I was left with the unquestionable conclusion that I must seek the death penalty against the defendant. It will ultimately be up to a jury and a judge to decide his fate. But as this case moves forward, I will seek the ultimate punishment. So in conclusion, we continue to work with our law enforcement partners at the Sebring Police Department, the Highlands County Sheriff's Office, the FDLE, and the FBI to build the best case possible for prosecution. As this case moves through our criminal justice system, please continue to support those who have been impacted by this tragedy. We are so blessed to live in a wonderful community. Now we're going to take some questions, but first I'd like to give Chief Hoagland an opportunity to say a few words.
Good afternoon. I am Chief Carl Hoagland of the Sebring Police Department. Over the past 26 years, I have been steadfast in my faith in our criminal justice system, and today's indictments reinforce that faith. I want to thank State Attorney Brian Haas, Assistant State Attorney Steve Houchin, and the staff of their respective offices for their continued dedication in prosecuting this case to the fullest extent of the law. On behalf of the entire community, I want to express my sincerest thanks and appreciation for all the agencies and organizations that have come together as a team to help prepare and prosecute this case. Lastly, I thank the grand jury for their service and for their indictment. This is a major accomplishment towards finding justice on behalf of our victims and on behalf of our community. Please keep the families in your prayers, keep the community in your prayers, and find faith that we will find justice as a result of this case. Thank you.
Are there any questions?
Has he said anything as to a motive as yet as to why this happened?
I know that there's a lot of questions about the why and the how and all of that, and as we go forward with this case, documents will become available that will shed some light onto that eventually, but at this point we're not able to talk about anything that he may have said.
The
The impression we've gotten in this case is that he had all the women lie down on the floor, and then he went one-to-one and shot them in the head and the back. An execution-style killing. Is that, in fact, what happened, and would you describe this in those terms?
Well, again, I certainly understand the interest in the specifics, and in due time that will become public. We have two concerns, main concerns. The one is to preserve this case as the best prosecutable case as possible. I do not want to say or do anything that's going to impact the system and the ability for the trial to occur without any issues. Secondly, the victims' families are going through an incredibly tough time, and when this information is released about the specifics, I want it to be so they have information in advance. If they choose not to listen to that, then I think that's their right not to.
Did you discuss this with the families, and if so, were they all in agreement that this was the right thing to do, the death penalty?
Well, I'll be real careful about any specifics about what we talked about, but I can tell you that the actions that we took today in general were discussed with them, and there was no hesitation.
There's rumors that the suspect allegedly went to different banks, casing them out before he went to SunTrust. Is there any truth to that?
Well, I think the term rumors may have a good indication, but again, in due time, all the facts of this case will be able to be released and to look at, yes.
Has the defense raised the issue of change of venue?
Anything like that will be filed with the court, and we have our arraignment coming up. After the arraignment, there'll be a series of status hearings, and I think that will be the best indication to see what action the defense decides that they want to take.
Any more information you can release about the gun he used in the situation? We know he got it just a few days before. Is there anything new you can share with us?
Nothing beyond that.
Where did he get the gun?
Well, I think we'll just let that to the reports as they are released, but I think you all know it was bought locally.
Is he being charged for anything involving the person that was in the back room?
No.
Then can you release that person's name if they are not the victim of a crime?
When the records in this case become public, when this discovery process happens, I think that information possibly will be released at that time.
Has he been told about this?
I don't know. That's not something, we don't have any contact with him, so I'm sure his lawyers will be meeting with him very soon.
How was he able to purchase the gun at a store locally if he had been admitted to a mental health institution previously?
Those are all things that we'll have to get some answers for down the road. I can't confirm any of that at this point.
I know the governor early on had said something to the effect of we're going to prosecute him and give him the toughest punishment or something to that effect. I can't imagine it's ever an easy decision for you to seek the death penalty, but in this case, was it easy at all considering what he's accused of, or did it take time to come to this decision? Like, how did you get there?
Look, anybody that has a family member that's murdered, to them that's the worst case that they can imagine. As state attorney, it's my job to make sure that we're using the death penalty as appropriately as we can in compliance with the law. And if you look at this situation with the horror of what happened with 5 victims, it was, for me, it was an obvious conclusion to reach.
What are the aggravators?
We have that's been filed, and that's public record. We'll be happy to provide that to you. I'd rather refer to what was actually written than stand up here and try to name them for you.
Does the grand jury, or do they have to charge the death penalty, or can you make that decision?
The grand jury's responsibility is to decide whether or not to indict or not. It is my responsibility to decide whether or not to seek death, and I have.
Any idea when the trial could start?
Like any case such as this, it's very likely going to take a long time to get this to trial, and that's a very frustrating thing for our victims. It's frustrating for our community, but this is not a situation where there's going to be closure for the criminal justice process anytime soon.
Is the suspect on suicide watch?
I don't have any information on his status.
Was the weapon purchased at the local gun show that happened the weekend before?
No.
Have any boundaries on there?
Okay, any other questions?
Is this tough for you personally? I mean, just the fact this has to be, is this one of the biggest cases you've ever been involved in?
Well, again, I mean, any case that we handle with a serious charge like this, it's very tough, but it's my job. It's what we have to do, and we're very fortunate to have such a great community of law enforcement, and I'm blessed with having wonderful prosecutors. Steve Houchin has been doing this for so long. Everyone down here knows him, but it is tough. It's very tough, and we have a lot of questions, obviously, the why and how could this happen, and it could have been any of us in that bank that day. But I don't have those answers, but my answer is the only thing I know, and that's to prosecute this case in the best way that we can, and that's what we're going to do. Okay. Thank you all. Have a good afternoon.